Welcome everyone. Welcome to our second last day of looking at this incredible human body that we've been given and its inbuilt ability to heal itself. And that's a wonderful thought, and I'm sure we've all had cuts and scrapes, maybe even broken bones, and have you noticed that they've healed? An orthopedic surgeon said to me one day, "We can set a bone, but we cannot heal a bone." Now you might think, well, that's obvious, but it's actually something that I don't think is really obvious to many people. And there is always a reason if someone's body is not working well. So how do you find out the reason? You look at the history. The history is one of the indicators of why a certain problem might be happening in the human body. And then you look at the symptoms. And the symptoms are your body saying, "Excuse me, could you do something?" And then you apply a simple natural remedy and you see what happens. And then you're looking at your body's response. One of the problems, I think you'll agree with me, there are a few problems in the world today, is the amount of environmental poisons that we're exposed to. In fact, it is estimated we're exposed to 100,000 new just about every year. That's a lot. And I think a lot of people are surprised to know it's even coming in through our clothes, through our cleaning products, through our personal care products, through our foods. And one of the problems is most people think, well, they wouldn't put it in if it hurt us. Is that right? They wouldn't say that jab was going to end all the problems in 2021 if it didn't. Well, it's not necessarily so. Unfortunately today, money drives a lot of big industries. They're not interested in you. They're not interested in me. And so we must become interested in you and me. Because I believe that God designed everyone to be their own doctor. Because only you know what you've been through. Only you know when this began. Only you know when the symptoms began. Only you can feel those symptoms, and only you will know what your body responds to and what it does not respond to. It was only probably about 20 years ago that medicine, in its investigation of this human body, discovered how the liver detoxifies us. And that's what I want to share with you in this class this evening, is how the liver effectively detoxifies us from environmental poisons. And I think, isn't this interesting? It's as if God put a veil over it until this part of planet Earth where we are exposed to so many environmental poisons. And what I'm going to show you is that the liver can effectively detoxify us from environmental poisons. Because I'd like to suggest that none of us had last passed about the age of 10 if it didn't. We've got an incredible body with this inbuilt ability, yes, to heal, but let's go back a step to also cleanse. And cleansing is a very important part of healing. Cleansing or releasing out of the body the waste. So let's begin by having a look at a few facts about the liver. The liver lives under your right rib. Under your right rib, so basically on this side, and the liver is the only organ in the body that has the ability to regrow. In fact, they can even do a transplant with a part of a liver. Quite incredible. And as we go through this today, you will start to understand why God made it so. It's a recoverable organ. If given the right conditions, it will recover. And it's often called the project manager. Why is the liver called the project manager? Because everything that comes into the body goes first to the liver, the project manager. And then the project determine what happens to it. And everything that comes out of the body comes out under the jurisdiction of the liver. That's why it's often called the project manager. It's the largest internal organ in the body. So let's have a look at what it does. But first of all, I want to have a look at what the liver does with the food that we eat. Carbohydrates have become a very popular food. Carbohydrates have always been part of the daily diet of mankind. But we've come to a time where it's almost as if we've taken carbohydrates from Africa, carbohydrates from India, carbohydrates from Asia, carbohydrates from the United Kingdom, and we've put all the carbohydrates together. And I don't think anyone chose to eat this way. It's just quick and it's just fast. We're such a fast society today. So let's have a look at what most people would have eaten for breakfast. Most people would have eaten for breakfast probably cereal. That's a very popular one. We know it's a popular one. There's a whole aisle devoted to it. There's a whole aisle devoted to bread, another very popular carbohydrate, and cakes, biscuits, croissants, muffins, pretzels. We'll stop there because otherwise we'll fill up the whole board. Pizza, another carbohydrate. I didn't even know what pizza was when I was a child. Pasta, I didn't know what pasta was when I was a child. But I don't think there's a home without pasta today. It's a very popular food. It's a very quick, fast food. Rice, very popular carbohydrate, especially in the Asian countries. Potatoes, I think potatoes are popular in the European countries. I understand the Dutch like their potatoes. I know the Germans do. United Kingdom, big on potatoes. Last and certainly least in nutritive value is the pure crystallized acid that's extracted from the sugarcane plant. You see when I say people have become high carbohydrate consumers. I think it's just there, it's just quick, and it's just fast. But when I was raising my children way up in the mountains of Australia in a rainforest, I used to make everything that we ate. We were an hour from town. This was not fast food. This is not fast food down on the farm. Takes a while to make cereal, takes a while to make bread, cakes, etc., etc. Takes a while to make pizza, pasta, takes a while to cook rice, takes a while to cook potatoes. I've never tried to extract sugar from sugar cane, but can you see it's all food that takes time. So what's fast food up in the rainforest? What's fast food on the farm? Yes, fruits and vegetables. I used to just feed my children breakfast. I gave them a great breakfast like a king. And I didn't hear from them again till lunchtime. And sometimes that was 5, nearly 6 hours later. I'd go on the veranda and I'd do the Australian call. Have you heard of the Australian call? I won't be too loud. Cooey. That's the Australian call, cooey. And I'd hear, yeah. And kids would come running. And we'd all sit down to eat. And then we noticed something. William wasn't there. He's the youngest. Just a little bloke. Oh, you know what bloke is? Yeah, that's a man. He's just a little bloke. We thought, where's William? We knew exactly where to find him. He'd been getting a bit hungry. He was only 3. He'd be in the cucumber patch. He'd gone to the fast food shop, cucumber, and there he'd be sitting, eating away at a cucumber. Getting hungry, Mum hasn't called yet, I'll go to the cucumber patch. Yes, fast food on the land is fruits and vegetables. What's the message from God? Lots of fruits and vegetables. Yesterday we looked at the importance of fibre. And in our next class we'll look at that again when we look at the immune system. because fibre feeds the microbiome in the gut. And the microbiome in the gut is a very important part of establishing our immune system. But look at food on the farm. Yes, the fruits and vegetables are easily available. Look at nuts. I got some local walnuts today, delicious. And I started cracking them after the meal. But after about 6 nuts, I got things to do. What's the message from nuts? A little bit less. Takes a while to crack. And if you are only eating what's grown on your farm, are you going to eat all your walnuts in 3 months so you got no walnuts for the rest of the year? Can you see the message from nature is lots of fruits and vegetables, the foods that take a little bit longer, a little bit less, the nuts, the seeds, a little bit less. So I don't think anyone chose to eat this way. It's just quick and it's just fast in the city. All of these foods break down in the gastrointestinal tract to a singular structure called glucose. And glucose, it now is absorbed into the blood and then it goes straight to the liver. Remember, he's the project manager. Goes straight to the liver. And the first place the liver sends it is to the cell. So I want to show you what happens in the cell. Here's the cell. The glucose goes in. It goes through a 20-step pathway. The 20-step pathway gives us 2 units of energy. The next pathway is the 8-step pathway. The 8-step pathway gives us 36 units of energy, and the difference is oxygen. This 8-step pathway uses oxygen. In the presence of oxygen, we get so much more energy. This pathway, no oxygen. That's why we'll have so much more energy when we nose breathe, because when we nose breathe, we're getting more oxygen. And more oxygen at the cellular level means more energy. So the first place that the liver sends that glucose is to the cell. But we've still got a lot left over, and only so much can go through that energy pathway. And so now, that excess glucose is stored as glycogen. What's glycogen? Glycogen is a name given to quick-release glucose stores. So exercising this morning, I didn't need to eat before I exercised because I've got glycogen stores. But only so much can be stored as glycogen. And the glycogen that is stored in the muscle can only be used by the muscle. In fact, one writer described it as like in a prison, can only be used by the muscle cell. And when you wake up in the morning, you have your water. Water's necessary to be able to release this. Then you do your push-ups or your walk. I think it was push-ups this morning, stretches because it was a bit wet outside. Then as you start moving your body, your glycogen stores get plucked, sent down the pathway, plucked, sent down the pathway, plucked, sent down the pathway. An amazing process. But the liver, it can store glycogen. And that glycogen is unique. It's unique in that it can be sent all over the body. It can be sent to the brain, it can be sent to the toes, it can be sent to the heart. Wherever it's needed, it can be sent. But only so much glycogen can be stored. And we've still got a lot of glucose left over. So the third place that the liver causes to be stored is as fat. Now, this information is important because this information shows us that fat doesn't make you fat. What makes you fat? High carbohydrate. And this high carbohydrate diet that's actually been popular probably since about the 1980s, especially when the message came through that fat causes heart disease, but it's been disproven. Do you know what I find? And I was reading this in a health magazine. One writer said that they think it's going to take a whole generation to get fat phobia out of the brain. And I find that to be true. If I meet a 70, 80-year-old person, they won't touch fat. If I meet a 50, 60-year-old, they'll have a little bit. If I meet a 34-year-old, they don't have any trouble with fat. So I think fat phobia has mostly been eased away now because it's not true. And it certainly doesn't make you fat. What makes you fat is this high carbohydrate diet. In fact, the liver can't do anything else with it. It's got excess here, we'll store it up in fat. And this is a big reason, one of the main reasons why we're seeing so much obesity today. Another reason why we're seeing so much diabetes today, just too much glucose. It's also a contributing factor to the cancer rates we're seeing because cancer cells consume 15 times the glucose of any other cell. But let me please define this. Carbohydrates are not bad. It's only when they're overdone and refined. And that's what we're seeing today. Overdone and refined. My husband would never forgive me if the potatoes stopped. You probably wouldn't either. I'd be thrown out of Asia if I said the rice had to stop. We all love our bread. No, they're not bad foods. It's only when they're overdone and refined. And I think it's just something that happened because it was convenient and it was just fast. But when you stop and think about it, it really doesn't make any sense. When you consider that the 3 essential food groups, we've looked at this a couple of times, are fibre, and especially in the refined carbohydrates, there's usually none of that. Protein, not much protein there. Fats, well, unfortunately, with the fat-free push since the probably 60s, 70s, 80s, often that's missing too. But what has been shown in the research is that the non-essential food group is actually carbohydrates. Do you know what that means? You can actually live without them, though we don't suggest you do. We enjoy them. They're only a problem when you're overdoing it. And so this high carbohydrate diet, here's a typical one: cereal and toast for breakfast, sandwiches for lunch, pasta for tea, cake, donut, mid-morning, mid-afternoon. That's almost 100% carbohydrate, especially when it's refined, often deficient in the fibre, proteins and fats. So it's time to get back to bringing carbohydrate into the ratio that it should be. And because carbohydrates are non-essential, that's the part that you play with. You play with that. And you never compromise fibre, protein and fat, but you can certainly compromise carbohydrates. And the negotiations change depending on you, depending on your size, depending on your weight, depending on your sex, depending on your age, depending on the physical and mental output through the day. And how do you know you're having the right amount carbohydrate? Who will tell you? Your body will tell you. I eat a very low carbohydrate meal. Do you know why I eat a very low carbohydrate food program? Because I love it. I've got lots of energy. I sleep well. Weight just stays the same. Brain works. What's the result? Body's going, yeah, I like this one. I like this. So never negotiate these 3. Negotiate this one. I was pregnant or breastfeeding non-stop for 14 years. I ate more carbohydrates then than I eat now. I'm just a little lady. I don't need much. But something else is happening. When the environmental poisons come into our body, how do they come in? Through our skin, through inhalation, through our food. They always come first to the liver. And the liver looks at it and it goes, yeah, we can break this down, and releases it out. But sometimes, if it's highly toxic, the liver wraps it up in fat and stores it. And in every person on the planet, in their fat cells, there would be some fat-soluble toxins, because most toxins are in a fat-soluble state. So what are we going to do with that? We had a Vietnam veteran attend our program. Vietnam's probably the first time that chemical warfare was used in large amounts. Yes, chemical warfare was starting in World War I, World War II, but it's almost in the Vietnam War, there was no limit. And they used to spray the chemicals from planes to kill the jungle so that the soldiers could see the enemy, but guess who else was down there? Yes, our soldiers. And we've got a lot of sick Vietnam veterans. In fact, the guy that came to our program, he said most of my mates that I went to war with are dead. Some suicide, some cancer. He said, but I want to lose weight. And my doctor said to me, don't lose weight. Why did his doctor say that to him? Because what's in his fat cells? Nasty stuff. Nasty. And when we lose weight, what's getting broken down? The fat cells. He said, I have come to your retreat because I have heard that you nutritionally support the liver as it detoxifies. I said, you are right, we do. And that's what I want to take you through today. And I'm going to show you what our guests do at our retreat. They come in Sunday, and on Sunday we give them a beautiful meal so they've got something to dream about for 2 days. Because Monday, Tuesday are juicing days. And at 8 o'clock on Monday morning, the first juice is served. And that juice is 250 ml. And that 250 ml glass, probably it's predominantly, and I'm going to whiz over to the next screen for a minute, where I'll come back. It's 80% carrot. This is called the vegetarian's milk because you could just about subsist on this. 80% carrot, 10% apple. We usually use Granny Smith apple. And we found that this works very well for the diabetic too, this juice. Their blood glucose levels they balance out nicely. So that's predominantly the juice that we use. And as you will see, we serve a juice every 2 hours. And every juice we serve is a variation of that. Sometimes it's 60% carrot and we'll do a 20% beetroot. Or sometimes it's 60% carrot and we'll do a 20% cucumber and we'll put a bit of ginger in there. And often it depends on what we've got in the garden. In fact, if the cucumbers are producing big time, we'll put a cucumber in every juice because cucumber's very alkalizing. So let's go back. So the first juice is carrot, celery and apple juice. 10 o'clock juice is maybe a slight variation on that theme. 12 o'clock, another slight variation. 2 and 4. So these juices are served every 2 hours. As you can see, I don't want to do that. Eraser. So these juices are served every 2 hours. And we serve 5 juices a day. PM and PM. And then at 6 o'clock at night, we serve a broth. And this broth is a lot of vegetables cooked in a lot of water for about 4 hours and then strained. So it's very mineral rich because in the late afternoon, our guests have a steam sauna. In my next class, when we look at the immune system, I'll be showing you how that steam sauna, they do the steam sauna, they dive into the creek, back into the steam sauna, and they do that 3 times. Does a massive boost to their immune system. But there's another reason why we're doing it, because the big sweat, they're sweating out a whole lot of waste. And they're sweating out waste, but they're also losing some minerals. And so we give them broth every night, because those vegetables are full of minerals. All the minerals go out of the vegetables into the water. We strain the water. We put some Celtic salt in. And that's one of the reasons we have the broth at night. Also, we serve 100 ml supplement. What's the 100 ml? The 100 ml is a green barley. So we have green barley powder. We put a teaspoon in with a little bit of water and lemon. As I go through the 3 phases of the liver detox, you will understand why we do that. So let's have a look at this 3 phases of the liver detox. Phase 1. In phase 1 of the liver detox, and when does phase 1 begin? So remember, we've given our guests a beautiful lunch. They have the steam sauna in the afternoon, and they have broth in the evening. So they wake up on Monday morning, and instead of solid food, we give them a liquid breakfast. We say to our guests, we're going to feed you very well over these next 2 days. You couldn't eat in a day what we put in those juices. But we want to bypass digestion. And the reason we want to bypass digestion is that we want the body to start breaking down unnecessary parts. It's called autophagy. And that's the amazing thing about a fast. Fasting has been used for centuries to cleanse and create healing in the human body. It's an age-old remedy. But today, in 2025, our liver needs nutrients to effectively do this. You see, we are not giving enough glucose in the juices for the body to run. And so the body starts breaking down those fat cells. And do you remember what's in them? What's in them is often many years of built-up environmental poisons, the fat-soluble toxins. We'll do T. The fat-soluble toxins. And that's why when someone goes on a fast, their breath usually isn't very nice, body odour's not very nice, what they're releasing in the toilet is not nice. I say to our guests, rejoice, where was it before it came out? It's the body's way of getting rid of the waste. And so the fat starts to get broken down Monday morning. Starts to release once again the fat-soluble toxin. Yes, it's being broken down to give the glucose for our body to run on, but in the process the fat-soluble toxin's released. Once again it comes to the liver. Once again the liver says, oh no, not this nasty one again. And it's about to say, wrap it up in fat and then it says, hang on, they're at Misty Mountain Health Retreat. Hang on, we're getting the nutrients necessary to break this fat-soluble toxin down to a water-soluble toxin. Because the body cannot release the fat-soluble toxin in a fat-soluble state. It has to be broken down to a water-soluble state, then it can be sweated out, urinated out via the colon. So now that the liver sees, actually I think we can do this. I think we can break this fat-soluble toxin to a water-soluble state. And so it begins with phase 1 of the liver detox, where the liver takes this fat-soluble toxin and it breaks it down to a metabolite. What's a metabolite? A metabolite is simply the first stage of metabolism, or you could say the first stage of breakdown. So that's what a metabolite is, first stage of breakdown. But this metabolite, it can often be 100 times worse than it originally was, 100 times more toxic. This metabolite, it creates a lot of free radicals. And free radicals damage the tissues. If you know what a free radical is, it's an atom with an electron short. And because it's an electron short, it grabs the electron from the next atom. And now because it's an electron short, it grabs it from the next one. There's this cascading effect that's damaging to the tissues. And you might say, well, what's the liver doing? It's just created something worse than it originally was. It's a process. It's like what happens when you clean out the garden shed. Halfway through, it's 100 times messier than when you started. It's like when you're cleaning out the kitchen cupboards. The kitchen's 100 times messier than when you started. It's a process. But you've got to go through that to get to your clean kitchen cupboards. And it's the same with the liver breaking down this fat-soluble toxin. It's a process. So your liver has certain needs at this stage. It needs, we'll do phase 1. What do phase 1 needs? Phase 1 needs antioxidants. So what are antioxidants? Antioxidants are called free radical scavengers because antioxidants come with a lot of extra electrons. And an extra electron given to a free radical, it is no longer a free radical. So where do we get these antioxidants from? The most famous antioxidant is beta-carotene. And beta-carotene is found in all your orange and your green coloured vegetables. And every juice we give our guests is either green or orange or red. And the orange colour, of course, comes from the carrots. So all your orange and green coloured, particularly vegetables, very, very high in antioxidants. Vitamin C, when we give our guests the vitamin C, we give it to them, I think it's usually half a teaspoon, in the green barley. Remember the 100 ml green barley, bit of water, bit of lemon. And the other one is vitamin E. Vitamin E is a fat-soluble vitamin. In a minute we'll look at where they get that. Now, do you remember what that Vietnam veteran said? He said, I've come to you because I have heard that you nutritionally support the liver. Remember, we're not giving enough glucose to run on, and so the liver starts to break down the fat cells to give the glucose necessary, but as it breaks down the fat cells, the fat-soluble toxins are also released. So 8 o'clock, the person gets a 250 ml carrot and apple juice and 100 ml of green barley. And in that green barley, we put that little bit of vitamin C. Vitamin C is not ascorbic acid. Vitamin C is ascorbic acid with bioflavonoids. So when you buy vitamin C, make sure it's ascorbic acid with bioflavonoids. So let's move on. Within 36 hours of beginning a detox program, phase 2 kicks in. So you could say, that's Tuesday. So Tuesday at Misty Mountain, phase 2 kicks in. And in phase 2, the liver takes this highly toxic, highly volatile metabolite. Now let's go back. Here we are, phase 2. The liver takes this highly volatile, highly toxic metabolite and it joins it together with amino acids. The union of the toxic metabolite and the amino acids gives us the water-soluble state. So the union or the joining together of the toxic metabolite and amino acids gives us the water-soluble state. Now, in a water-soluble state, it can be easily released out of the body. And phase 3 happens in conjunction with phase 2. And in phase 3, the liver takes this water-soluble state, there it is, and it releases it out via the sweat glands. That's why our guests have a steam sauna every afternoon. And when the body's given the right conditions, 70% of body's waste can come out via the sweat glands. See, your skin is the largest organ in the body. And so if the person's well hydrated and having a really good sweat, a lot of the waste is coming out of there. In fact, the skin is often called the third kidney. So if someone has compromised kidney function, those steam saunas can really help the kidney by stimulating the skin to throw off a lot of the waste, which takes a load off the kidneys. Also, the water-soluble state can be released out via the urine, and it can also be released out via the colon. And that's why it's so vital, and we ensure that our guests' alimentary organs are working at optimum capacity, so that as these water-soluble toxins are released out of the body, released out of the fat cells, they can be released out of the body. So Tuesday, when our guests wake up, often they're going into phase 2. And so we do a slight adjustment on Tuesday, and I'll show you that adjustment. But first of all, I want to just define Monday. So we do 100 ml of green barley at 8 o'clock on Monday, at 12 o'clock, and at 4 o'clock with the juice. Every 2 hours, 250 ml juice and that supplement. Tuesday at 8 o'clock, yes, definitely they have 250 ml juice, but we serve a protein drink. We serve a protein drink to supply the amino acids so that the toxic metabolites can be mopped up and converted into a water-soluble state. So what's the protein drink? So the protein drink is 100 ml, and the protein drink that we use is usually pea protein, so it's 100 ml. So there's many protein powders you can buy. You can buy pea protein powder, you can buy hemp protein powder, you can buy brown rice protein powder. You've just got to look at your ingredients, make sure there's no sugar in them. And so we do a teaspoon of protein powder. We mix it with a little bit of organic soy milk or almond milk and a little bit of coconut milk. And on Monday, just in case a few of these toxic metabolites slip out early, we also give 2 protein drinks on the Monday. But because they're in phase 1, the requirements for antioxidants are greater, so we give 3 green barleys on Monday. But on Tuesday, we give 3 protein drinks, because on Tuesday our guests have gone into phase 2 of the liver detox. And the requirements for green barley are not as great. So we just do 2 green barleys and 3 protein drinks. That's the difference. So this Vietnam vet, he was correct. He was correct when he said, I have heard that you nutritionally support the liver to effectively detox from environmental poisons. He was right, we do. It was probably 15, 16 years ago when I did my nutrition course in Australia that we studied the 3 phases of the liver detox every module, 10 modules. And every module we went a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. And what I have done is I've simplified it greatly so the average person can understand it. I gave this presentation in America a few years ago, and a man came up to me and said, "This is fascinating." He said, "But this is not for your lay people, this is for your academics." I said, "Lay peoples have livers too, you know." Personally, I think that this is vital information for us people living on planet Earth in 2025, exposed to more environmental poisons than any generation that's ever lived on the planet. And it's such good news that our liver has the ability to break down these environmental poisons, but we need to nutritionally support that liver to do that. I have met people that have gone on 1 week water fast and got incredibly sick. Do you know why they've got incredibly sick? Because their fat cells are breaking down, but they haven't got the nutrients, they haven't got the amino acids to effectively convert those fat-soluble toxins to the water-soluble state. So let me show you what happens. If a person goes on a long water fast and they're not supplying the amino acids, the liver can start to break down. In fact, one study showed that the liver can even suffer about 20% liver function loss when you're not supplying the basic nutrients that the liver requires to effectively break that water-soluble, fat-soluble toxin down to a water-soluble toxin. And since we have been using the protein drinks, we don't get people suffer unduly in the detox. My attention was brought to this probably 20 years ago now. We had a man, 44, named Anton, who had some major allergies. And on Tuesday, let's look at Tuesday. On Tuesday, at 2:00 in the afternoon, and at that point I didn't know about the 3 phases of the liver detox, and at that point we didn't give our guest protein drink. And it was Tuesday at 2:00 I was called. Staff said, "Anton needs to speak to you." I said, "What is it, Anton?" He said, "I just feel terrible. My brain is foggy." He said, I'm nauseous. My body, it sounds to me like it's calling out for protein. And you know what the best health professional will do to you? They'll listen. Make sure you're that good health professional that you will listen. That you will listen. I said, "Say no more. Say no more, Anton. I'm listening." So I went down, I made him a protein powder drink. I came up, I gave it to him. I think it was about 200 ml, this one. He drank it. I saw him 10 minutes later. He said, "Thank you." He said, "Thank you. I feel so much better." But you know what I wanted to know? Why? Why did Anton need protein? Why? And it was only a year later when I began my nutrition course that as I began to study the liver and the 3 phases of liver detox, I began to understand. The reason this young man had allergies is because he had a lot of fat-soluble toxins stored up. I've known people that have gone on 1 week water fasts and they don't seem to have suffered greatly. I'd like to suggest they don't have many fat-soluble toxins built up in their fat. The more fat-soluble toxins a person has built up in their cells and they start to fast, the more trouble they're going to have, as you can see. So this Vietnam veteran that attended our program, we gave him a protein drink 8, 10, 2, 12, 2, 4, 6 and 7:30 at night. Can you see why we did that? We wanted to supply a lot of amino acids because we knew a lot of nasty things were coming out of his fat cells. And he did not suffer. In fact, he went through the fasting program very comfortably. And he contacted me a few weeks later and he said, "Thank you so much." He said, "I'm feeling so good." He said, "I've lost a little bit of weight." He was probably carrying about 20 kilos excess. In 6 weeks, he said, "I've lost, I think it was 10 kilos lost." That's pretty good. So why did he lose weight like that? Because he was eating breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen. And if he ate at night, it'd just be a bowl of soup, something very light. And he was exercising every day, and he was drinking more water, and he'd greatly reduced his carbohydrate. It's the most effective way to lose weight is to get those carbohydrates right down. And when you realise that carbohydrates are a non-essential food group, it doesn't hurt to even stop the carbohydrates. Now, this rings true of a diet that's fairly popular today called the ketogenic diet. Is that right? What's the ketogenic diet? It just greatly reduces the carbohydrates. Again, carbohydrates aren't bad, but that's the part of the meal you negotiate with. Because you can, as long as you have the 3 essentials. So let's have a look at what we need for phase 2. What we need for phase 2 is protein. Protein is an essential nutrient, and most people have never considered having protein on a fast, but when you understand the 3 phases of the liver detox, you begin to understand why it is necessary. In fact, it is vital to mop up those toxic metabolites. We have had some very sick builders attend our program who've been exposed to a lot of chemicals. We've had some very sick cleaners attend our program because they've been exposed to a lot of chemicals in the cleaning products. We've also had some very sick hairdressers because the perming solutions, the dyes, there's a lot of chemicals in those. And when they come through the detox program, we give them extra protein to cope with the chemicals that are starting to come out of their body. What I wanted to show you now is we've looked at how you can detoxify for environmental poisons built up in the fat cells, and it's one thing to break them down to water-soluble states, but the next step is eliminating them out of the body. And we have 4 organs of elimination. One is the skin. And the skin is the largest internal organ in the body. And when given the right conditions, as I mentioned, up to 70% of body's waste can come out of the skin. So what does the skin need for it to be an effective organ of elimination? It needs water. And this is water in and water out. So we suggest that our guests, and probably an easy way to do it, is to have a glass of water between every juice. Well, we encourage our guests to go to bed with water beside their bed. And we encourage them as soon as they wake up, and we wake them up at 6 o'clock, have half a glass of water, go to the bathroom, have another half glass of water, then they come out to the main area where there's a warm lemon water for them. And over 15 minutes, they sip on that and chat away and sip on that. And we've got that little bowl of Celtic salt they can have a little bit. So by the time they go on their exercise program, which is 6:30 to 7:30, they've had a quarter of the daily requirements for water. See, it's the easiest way to get more water into your body is to have it early in the morning. And early in the morning, that bottom valve in your stomach called the pyloric sphincter, it's open so the water goes straight through and is used by the body. So we encourage our guests to have a glass of water between every juice, because at the end of the day, late afternoon, we give our guests a steam sauna. And they're going to be perspiring big time in the steam. And you can't hydrate your body half an hour before the steam bath. I say to our guests, you've got to start early, little by little over the day. And in the steam sauna, they go in the hot steam sauna for about 15 minutes, plunge into the mountain stream, or if they're a bit unstable and can't go on the steps down to the creek, they can have a whole cold shower, and we've got a shower head about this big outside the steam bath. There's only one part of your body that doesn't like getting hot, and that is the head. So we encourage our guests to dive their head under in the creek or put the cold water on the head. And in the steam sauna, we give them little buckets each with a little face cloth on it so that they can keep that head cool. So water is necessary to allow for the big outlet of waste when they're in the steam sauna. The skin also needs exercise. So we have a 1-hour exercise program in the morning. For those guests that can't do the long walk, we've got a gym where they can go on an exercise bike or rebounder. And we also have a Pilates class, which is a core strengthening class in the middle of the day. And we do encourage our guests to have rebound several times a day, go on walks. When you exercise, you increase the circulation of the blood to the skin. And when you increase the circulation of the blood to the skin, then the skin can throw off more waste. The skin also needs to breathe. We touched on this on Tuesday when we looked at the skin. So we encourage our guests not to put any chemicals on their skin. We're detoxing. We don't want to put any more in. And if our guests discover that their moisturisers don't have very good stuff in them, then we have a few products. You can get coconut oil and rub that into the skin if you've got dry skin. We also encourage our guests to change or wash the clothes that are touching their skin every day. Because when you perspire, the waste comes out onto the skin, from the skin onto the clothes, especially the underwear. Obviously, the outside coats and skirts don't need to be washed every day, but the clothes that are touching the torso, if you put them on the next day, your skin can actually absorb the waste from the clothes that it threw off yesterday. So we encourage our guests to definitely change and wash the clothes that they're touching their skin. We also encourage our guests to bring, especially the ladies, little cotton shorts, little cotton crop top to be in the steam sauna, because most swimming costumes are made out of polyester, nylon or acrylic. And if they've got them on in the steam sauna and they get hot, the skin can absorb those chemicals. I was very excited when I was in Phuket, Thailand earlier this year. I went into a shop and I saw board shorts for boys made out of cotton. That's really not easy to find. So Jack and I, we bought heaps for our boys. So allow the skin to breathe by being careful what you touch or what goes on the skin. The lungs are also an organ of elimination, and your lungs need water. If it's cold weather and you are talking to someone outside, you can see their breath, can't you? It's the moisture, the hot moisture coming out from their lungs. Every exhalation we make, we're losing a little bit of water. So the lungs must be well hydrated for the little alveoli to be able to do that gaseous exchange. And we should be breathing always through our nose. Genesis 2 verse 7 says, God formed man from the dust of the ground, breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. He became a living soul. Nose. When we breathe in and out through the nose, we can get 18% more oxygen down at the cellular level. And as I showed on our previous slide, that if that cell has enough oxygen, it's going to give us 18 times more energy than a cell that doesn't have the oxygen. The lungs also need us to be breathing in fresh air. We spend a third of our life in bed. Make sure that the air that you're breathing in your bedroom is fresh air. Even open that window a little bit. Yes, we want you to be warm, but where I'm staying at the moment, Lisa brought me in this huge woolen blanket, which is very nice. So I can have the window open a little bit because I am so warm. So we need fresh air, breathing in fresh air. That's important. The lungs also need us to exercise, because when you exercise, you start breathing in deeper and you are able to take in more air. And as you take in more air, because you're breathing deeper, you're throwing off more waste. The kidneys are also an organ of elimination, and the kidneys have certain needs as well. The kidneys need us to be drinking adequate water. Your water, your urine should almost be the colour of water. If your urine is a yellow colour, it's usually indicating you're not drinking enough water. And if you're not drinking enough water, the urine gets quite acidic, and that can be quite damaging to the little nephrons, the little filtering units. And the more water we drink, the more waste the kidneys can throw off. Your kidneys also need you to exercise. When you exercise, you increase the circulation of the blood to the kidneys. When you exercise, you're causing the kidneys to move. So just even walking, the kidneys are being strengthened and toned to perform their work. And if you're rebounding, every jump that you make, the kidneys are moving, so being strengthened. The kidneys need to be warm. Whenever I go to America in the summer, everywhere I go is cold because they have so much air conditioning. So even on a hot summer day where you wouldn't have to have much covering your kidneys, as soon as you go into those cold rooms, you must cover those kidneys. And the kidneys are just above your waist, under your ribs to the back. Make sure that area is kept warm. Warm kidneys means the blood can freely travel in and out. The colon is also an organ of elimination. Now, only microscopic waste can come out of the skin, can come out of the lungs, can come out of the kidneys. The colon eliminates the largest pieces of waste. And for the colon to be working effectively, it should be evacuating at least twice a day. So you can see with our guests, we give them solid food, Sunday lunch, but we don't give them any more solid food till Wednesday breakfast. So there's no fibre stimulating activity in the colon. So we give them colon tea. And colon tea, you'll see the recipe in my book. It's in both my books, Self-Heal by Design, and also in the book Sustain Me, where I have a chapter on the colon. And this colon tea contains 3 herbs that gently stimulate peristalsis in the colon. So if our guests usually go once a day, we'll give them 1 cup of tea at night. If they usually go twice a day, we'll give them half a cup of tea at night. If they usually go 4 or 5 times a day, we don't usually give them colon tea, because some, not a lot, but some colons just keep going. And if they go once a week, we usually give them a cup in the morning, in the middle of the day, and also in the night. So can you see we're listening? So by day 2 or 3, our guests say to our staff, "Do you need colon tea?" We don't want you to overgo, and we don't want things to stop, because the largest waste is coming out via the colon. The colon also needs us to drink adequate water. One of the main functions of the colon is for water to be taken out, so stools are formed. This is the colon. There's the appendix. There's where the small comes in. And the colon, in the last part, has a little loop there. And that loop is held up by a muscle. And that muscle is called puborectalis. And we're so very glad for that muscle. Because if you're in a traffic jam and you need to go, aren't you glad you can hold it? If the plane's about to land and you need to go, aren't you glad you can hold it? And it's all because of puborectalis. This muscle that sits in that last part of the large intestine that holds that last part of the colon up. So I'd like to show you what happens with different positions. So here is the throne, and here is someone sitting doing their daily evacuation on the throne. And when someone sits, that should be a bigger head, I think. If someone is sitting like that, puborectalis remains taut because it's a muscle. It remains held up. And of course we know things can still get through, but if that person sitting on the throne has a little stool in front of the throne so that when they're sitting on the throne, their knees are up and they're in the squatting position, then puborectalis relaxes, and when puborectalis relaxes, that enables the colon to open up and the contents pass with the greatest of ease. I've been to many countries, in Singapore, in Asia, in Africa, in India. I've been into toilets where it's a hole in the ground. It's all tiled and it's all flush, so you have to squat to go. And it's interesting that in so many countries, the traditional way of daily evacuation was always squatting. But now the science shows us it is the best way to do a daily evacuation because puborectalis relaxes when we're in the squatting position. So you can buy squatty potty. And squatty potty is a little stool that just wraps around the base of the toilet. So that's the good news. This is very important for people who are prone to bowel problems like constipation. You see, if this person hasn't gone for a couple of days and they decided to strain, all the pressure goes on the anus. And if too much pressure goes on that anus, then something's got to give, and that's when hemorrhoids come out. And very uncomfortable is the hemorrhoids. So squatting prevents hemorrhoids. Squatting can help the person to heal from hemorrhoids because it takes all pressure off. So position is important. So we're going to put position here too. Position is an important part of looking after the colon. Exercise is also an important part of looking after the colon. But something else that's vital for the colon is fibre. What fibre does is it stimulates peristalsis all the way through the colon, and what fibre also does is it sweeps the colon so that the colon is getting a daily sweep and a clean, and things are moving along regularly. Dr. Kellogg said 3 intakes of food a day should equal 3 evacuations a day. And if you notice that the colon has a mind of its own, if you tell it to go, it won't. And if you tell it to stop because it's going too much, it won't. It needs gentle stimulation. What stimulates it? Fibre, position, exercise, having adequate water. That stimulates peristalsis. And if it's in the habit of not going and it still won't go, then the colon tea can be taken, because those herbs gently teach the colon to start evacuating more regularly. Now there's one more tiny organ of elimination, and this tiny organ of elimination, you will know it if ever you've done a fast. You wake up in the morning and your mouth will feel terrible, and that's the tongue. The tongue also throws off waste, and there's a very easy way to help the tongue pull the waste out. It's called oil pulling. And oil pulling has been done all through Asia for centuries. So with oil pulling, you put a spoonful of coconut oil in your mouth and you swish. You might swish for 10 seconds, rest for 10 seconds, swish for 10 seconds. Usually you do it for 10 minutes. And then you release it out, not down the plug hole or your plumbing will get clogged up. Either put it in the garbage bin or release it out on the grass. And then rinse your mouth with water a couple of times and release that out. The reason why it's called oil pulling is it pulls waste out of the tongue, pulls waste out of the glands under the tongue, pulls waste out of the blood vessels under the tongue. But what I've also found is that the tonsils, it'll help pull waste out of the tonsils. I've known people with congested lungs, after they've oil pulled, they'll often cough up a lump or two. It seems to even pull or loosen from the lungs. But also people with congested sinus, after they've oil pulled, they usually blow, blow, blow. It seems to also pull and release from the sinuses. It's such an easy thing to do. So easy. I do it most days. I've got my coconut oil that I travel with. All I have to do is put it in the fridge so it's solid. Don't have to put it in the fridge here. So that it's solid when I travel. But I find it a great way to do little detox, just a little cleanse of the body, because it pulls waste out. I usually do it about half an hour before I have breakfast every day. Is oil pull. When our guests are on the detox program, we suggest that they oil pull ideally about 3 times a day. If you were to test what's in that coconut oil, you'd probably be quite shocked. It's just a simple way of pulling waste out of the tongue, out of the glands under the tongue, and out of the blood vessel under the tongue. But I've also had people tell me who had bleeding gums, also gingivitis, infected gums. They've oil pulled 3 times a day, and within a week it is all resolved. So that's really, really nice to know. Such a simple little thing you can do. So I trust that you look a little bit differently at your liver. It's a remarkable organ. You can now see why God designed it to be a recoverable organ, because we certainly need it. But it's nice to know, I think, that even though we're exposed often to environmental poisons that we don't choose to be exposed to, I'm sure I am every time I fly, that we have a liver that when you give the body the right conditions, it can effectively detox. Another reason why these are the 3 essential food groups. So make sure you're having adequate fibre with all of its minerals and antioxidants, adequate proteins, so that little by little, as waste comes out of your body can bind it together to release it, and great fats to keep those cells nourished.